Every single atom of iron in your blood is doing something right now that you have never once controlled, until you breathe differently. Across 300 million hemoglobin molecules in a single red blood cell, iron atoms grip oxygen with a force dictated by one variable, the concentration of hydrogen ions surrounding them. Change that concentration, which 5 minutes of deliberate breathing absolutely does, and you alter the atomic behavior of every oxygen-carrying molecule in your entire circulatory system. Not metaphorically, chemically. A study published in PNAS confirmed that researchers can now detect activity-evoked pH changes inside living human brain tissue. Your breath doesn't just calm you, it rearranges you, at the level of electrons. But the most disturbing part isn't what happens when you breathe deeply. It's what your cells have been doing without enough oxygen for years, and the molecular damage that might already be irreversible. The chemistry starts before you finish your first exhale. When you draw a slow, deep breath through your nose, air floods the paranasal sinuses, hollow cavities behind your cheekbones and forehead that most people never think about. These cavities are not empty space. They're nitric oxide factories. Nasal breathing drives a measured release of NO molecules directly into your airways, vasodilating your pulmonary capillaries and increasing oxygen transfer efficiency at the alveolar membrane. That oxygen doesn't just drift into your blood, it binds to hemoglobin, specifically to the iron atom at the center of each heme group. 4 iron atoms per hemoglobin molecule. Each one shifts its electron configuration when oxygen attaches. This is not biology class abstraction. This is quantum-level electron orbital rearrangement happening billions of times per second inside your lungs. A PNAS study on hemoglobin-oxygen affinity and the Bohr effect demonstrated how precisely this binding shifts under different pH conditions. Research that revealed even penguin hemoglobin evolved to maximize this atomic efficiency under extreme oxygen demand. Phys.org reported on the same research, emphasizing that breathing patterns literally reshape how molecules work. Not across evolutionary timescales, but breath by breath. Here's the mechanism.
When you exhale slowly, you retain slightly more carbon dioxide. CO2 dissolves in blood plasma as carbonic acid, which dissociates into bicarbonate and hydrogen ions. Those hydrogen ions lower pH around hemoglobin, and lower pH triggers the Bohr effect. Hemoglobin's grip on oxygen loosens. Oxygen molecules release more readily into tissues starving for them. Your muscles, your brain, your heart. 5 minutes of controlled breathing doesn't just deliver more oxygen. It shifts the atomic equilibrium between hydrogen ions and iron-oxygen bonds across your entire vascular system.
Wiley Online Library published findings showing that breathing patterns measurably alter oxygen distribution at the molecular level in living tissue, confirmed in studies tracking fetal oxygen supply during maternal physical activity. But there's a problem with this elegant system, because most people don't breathe this way. Most people breathe shallowly, rapidly through their mouths, and the atomic consequences of that are far worse than anyone assumed. Shallow breathing creates a cascade that operates in reverse. Less CO2 retention means fewer hydrogen ions. Blood pH climbs. This is respiratory alkalosis, and it happens in minutes. When pH rises, hemoglobin grips oxygen tighter. The Bohr effect works against you. Your blood is technically saturated with oxygen, but your tissues can't access it. Oxygen-rich blood flowing past oxygen-starved cells, your mitochondria, the organelles that generate adenosine triphosphate through the electron transport chain, begin to falter. Electrons still flow through complex I, complex 3, complex 4, but the rate changes. Without optimal oxygen delivery, electron leak increases, and leaked electrons don't just vanish. They collide with nearby oxygen molecules and produce reactive oxygen species, free radicals that shred lipid membranes, damage mitochondrial DNA, and accelerate cellular aging. Nature published research documenting how stressors impact mitochondrial function at the cellular level, affecting how atoms and molecules are processed across entire organ systems. And when mitochondria fail, Nature's review of mitochondrial diseases mapped the molecular breakdown. Cascade failure from electron transport dysfunction to organ-level pathology. A Frontiers pilot study on the acute effects of controlled breathing methods measured real-time physiological changes, demonstrating that breathing protocols produce immediate measurable shifts in the body's molecular and cellular systems. And then researchers found something that shouldn't have been possible. Your breath doesn't just modulate blood chemistry. It reaches your brain's electrical architecture directly. Nature published a case report showing respiratory patterns modulate cortical excitability. Your breathing rhythm physically changes the firing thresholds of neurons. Except for one detail no one could explain: the speed. These atomic level changes weren't accumulating over weeks. They were registering within the first 300 seconds. Mornus Witzdist, 300 seconds. 5 minutes. That's how long it takes for deep, controlled nasal breathing to shift the hydrogen ion concentration in your blood plasma enough to measurably alter the Bohr effect across your hemoglobin population, to increase nitric oxide bioavailability, to reduce electron leak at complex 3, to suppress reactive oxygen species generation, to activate vagal afferents that trigger acetylcholine release, slowing calcium ion channel activity in cardiac pacemaker cells, pulling your heart rate variability into coherence patterns associated with parasympathetic dominance. This is not relaxation. This is a coordinated atomic event. Nature published findings on Kir4.1 channels, potassium channels embedded in astrocyte membranes throughout your brain that function as molecular CO2 and hydrogen ion sensors, directly governing the drive to breathe. Read that again. Your brain contains protein channels that literally count carbon dioxide atoms and hydrogen ions and adjust your respiratory rhythm based on their concentration. When you override that automatic system with deliberate slow breathing, you're not fighting your biology. You're exploiting a molecular feedback loop that evolution spent 400 million years engineering. The calcium ion channels in your cardiac cells respond within 90 seconds. Your vagus nerve increases acetylcholine output. Your sinoatrial node slows. Not because you decided to relax, because ions change direction. And here's the revelation that should keep you awake. Longitudinal studies on chronic breathwork practitioners are now tracking epigenetic methylation changes, chemical tags on DNA that alter which genes express and which stay silent. 5 minutes changes your blood chemistry. Months of 5-minute sessions may change which parts of your genome are readable. Your atoms don't care about your intentions. They respond to partial pressures, ion gradients, and electron availability. And every breath you take, shallow or deep, nasal or oral, fast or slow, is a chemical instruction delivered to 300 trillion cells simultaneously. The question was never whether breathing changes your atoms. The question is what your atoms have been building while you weren't paying attention, and whether 5 minutes is enough to reverse it. The molecular machinery is documented. The pH shifts are measurable. The electron transport data is published. And tomorrow, we trace what happens when those same mitochondria encounter something they were never designed to process.